Hi there. Thank you for your interest in my new pattern, Sweet Peas. In this video, I intend to primarily show you how to make the stack decrease in here, but I'm also taking this opportunity to talk a little bit about the design elements and some of the design choices I made. For Sweet Peas, first I think it is important that we pick two colors and complementary color of beads that work together really well. I like to pick colors with high contrast. Whether in this case we are using a light colored leaf and a darker color background and complementary green colored beads in here, or in this version here we are using a light background and darker colored leaves and these beautiful crystal colored beads. Each element of the design should stand up on its own and pop up. So your choice of colors is very important. Second, Sweet Peas is knit from the long edge, which means that we start at the bottom edge of the scarf and we knit it in this direction, which means if we want to make it longer, then we need to add more stitches, and the pattern repeat is 21 stitches. And if we want to make it wider in this direction, then we add more sections to the scarf. And the pattern has instructions in terms of how to add more stitches and how to add more sections. Thirdly, I want to talk a little bit about this particular motif that makes up Sweet Peas. This motif in here is made up of, it starts with a stacked increase, so we add a large number of stitches in a stack via the beaded stacked increase technique. And then we work short rows to make up this form. And then to pull it together like this, we work a series of decreases. And we decrease those in a stack as well. And you may have noticed this already, but as we're knitting Sweet Peas, we knit each color separately. So there is no intarsia or any other stranded color work or whatever. We knit each color on its own. Next, I would like to talk about cable management when working the short row leaf. For this, I'm going to use this project that I have in progress. And I have already made all my stacked increases in here, and this is how they look like. I do have another video that is dedicated to stacked increases. I encourage you to watch that video. So one thing to notice in here is that when I finish my stacked increases, next I am on a wrong side row. It means that I am going to begin working my short row leaves on a wrong side row, and the instructions that you have in your pattern mentions that. I do have a chart as well as written instructions to help you working the short row leaf. So to begin working, I'm going to try to scoot all my stitches onto the needle, and as you can see, it's very difficult for me to do that because of the stacked increase. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate the top of the next increase, which is in this case the first one. So let's get to that one. See in here, so I've isolated that increase. Then I'm going to pull a loop in my cable right after the top of the increase, right here. So I'm going to pull this loop, and I'm going to pull enough loop so I can actually knit comfortably. Then you'll see it's actually easy for me to push all my stitches onto the the needle. Then I bring my right needle tip and I begin knitting my short row leaf. Here I'm going to demonstrate quickly because the intent is not really to show you how to work the short rows, because you have instructions on how to do that. Really, the intent in here is to show you how to manage the cable so that you're able to work the leaf. I'm working to the point where I'm going to begin my short rows, and I'm almost getting there. So I'm following my instructions, which you do have in your pattern, and I'm knitting per my instructions. You'll notice here I'm actually knitting quickly because, again, I do not want to really spend too much time on this part. And so again, my first row is a wrong side row. Then I need to turn my work and knit my second short row. Well, I'm actually, to speed up the process, I'm going to knit in reverse, and so I can get to that point where I can show you what to do next. So knitting in reverse. And by the way, if you know how to knit in reverse, working the short row leaves is going to make life so much easier and so much faster for you. So here I got to the point where in my instructions I need to knit around. So I've worked the right side of the leaf. So in here I've worked these rows in here, and now I'm going to knit one row around the leaf and begin working the short rows on the left side in here. So to do this, I'm actually going to knit I'm going to leave 5 stitches on my needle. I'm going to knit to the last 5 stitches, and then I'm going to rearrange the loops in my cable. So this is how I'm going to do it. So I'm going to knit to that point. So only 5 stitches. See, 2, 4, 5. So I knit to this point. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all of these stitches onto the cable part and pull also on the right side of my pull my right side needle tip, pull all of those stitches on the cable part. Then I'm going to scoot over to the next leaf, which is the stacked increase. Going to isolate the top of that stacked increase, and right here. Now I'm going to pull a loop right there, right after the center of the increase, or the top of the increase. So now I'll pull that loop. So basically you'll see here my loop is right after this the next increase. Rather, I want to say my loop is right after the center of the next increase, or the top part of the increase. And here my break in my cable is right before the one I'm working on right now. So I worked the right side of the short row leaf, or the short rows on the right side of the leaf, and then next I'm going to work the left side of the leaf, the short rows on the left side. And then when I'm finished, I'm going to continue and work again the right side of the next leaf, and then rearrange my cables like I did for this first one. And finally, we get to actually the part where I'm going to demonstrate the stacked decrease. As I mentioned before, we we worked a beaded stacked increase and a series of short rows to form this leaf motif in here. And in this design we have a minimum 14, and you can make it larger if you choose to do that. And we're to the point where we're working the row where we need to make our decreases and pull the fabric together. And I have already done the majority of those in here, and I wanted to show you how to make the next couple. So if you noticed, is I have a loop in here on my needle, and through trial and error I found that it is much easier to actually put a loop at the, it's easier to show it in here, to put a loop somewhere at the top of the leaf motif before I begin knitting and to make my decrease, my stacked decreases. So I just got in the habit of knitting about 18 stitches when I finish my last decrease at the of the previous leaf. Then once I knit 18 stitches, I pull my needle through and give myself enough slack to begin knitting again. You can count 18 stitches, or you can count 17, or whichever number you feel comfortable with. What I would advise is you follow a consistent process that you feel comfortable with and that's predictable, because then it's going to help you determine whether you run into any issues or not. I'm going to demonstrate this stack decrease twice. The first time I'm going to demonstrate it knitting traditional style, and the next decrease I will demonstrate knitting continental style. First, traditional style. I'm going to knit as per my pattern tells me to do, which is to one stitch before my marker. I lost a stitch in here. So here I am, one stitch before my marker. I am going to slip the stitch knitwise, remove my marker, I don't need it anymore. Then, following my pattern, I'm knitting 2 stitches together, then slipping that slipped stitch over the 2 I just knit together. Then I transfer 2 stitches from my right needle tip to my left needle tip purlwise. Then I slip the first stitch knitwise. And you may ask, why am I doing this? Why do I transfer it first to the left needle tip and then I slip it back on the right needle tip? I do this because when I pass it over the next knitted stitches, I don't want it to cross over and become very tight. So it's important that we first transfer it to the left needle tip, then we slip it knitwise onto the right needle tip and proceed with our decrease. The next step is to knit 2 stitches together from the left needle tip, then pass that slipped stitch over. Then we repeat the process 10 times. So we pass, rather we did it once and we repeat it 9 more times for a total of 10 times. So we slip 2 stitches purlwise to the left needle tip, slip again the first stitch knitwise, knit 2 stitches together and slip that stitch over. I'm going to continue with my decrease, slipping 2, slipping one knitwise, knitting two together, and slipping that stitch over. I'm back right now, and I finished my stacked decrease in here. You'll notice I have 2 stitches left that are not part of the decrease, and this stitch was involved in the last decrease. And if I count in here how many of this beige colored yarn that I can see in here, I have 10 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've completed my 10 repeats of my stacked decrease. So next, I'm going to knit to the position where I'm going to make my my next decrease. And I forgot to mention, when for this design, because we are knitting it widthwise and because we are making these stacked increases, it's important that you use a very long cable with your needle. So here I'm going, as I mentioned, I'm going to knit 18 stitches. Again, that's a personal preference. You can select to knit 17 or 19. You do want to make sure that you have enough stitches on when you work your decrease, so that you don't have to kind of borrow from the side of the cable. So really the minimum I think that you should knit before you pull your cable, or rather, I'm sorry, the maximum that you should knit before you pull your cable are 20 stitches, because then you can make all your decreases and you don't have to borrow from this side of the cable. So let's see how many we've got. This was our last decrease in here. So I'm going to knit 18 stitches and then pull the needle through. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17. One more. So here I've got my 18 in here. I pull this needle through. Oops. And I have enough slack to begin making my next decrease. And for this next decrease, I'm going to show it worked continental style. So I'm showing this decrease worked continental style. I'm knitting to 1 stitch before my marker per my pattern. Here we go. I'm going to slip this stitch knitwise, going to remove my marker because I don't need it. Then knit 2 stitches together and slip the slipped stitch over, pass 2 stitches purlwise onto the left needle tip, slip the first one again knitwise, knit 2 stitches together and slip pass the slipped stitch over. Then I repeat the process 9 more times for a total of 10 repeats. Oops. This is my second repeat. And this is my third repeat. So I'm going to continue this process until I've done all of my decreases in the stack. I finished my decrease in here, or when I say decrease I mean my stack decrease, and I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 repeats. And now I am ready to move on to work the next stack decrease on the next leaf. So this is it for this video. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you again for being interested in sweet peas. I hope that you enjoy knitting it.